Welcome back, everyone. From the life of the rich and the famous to life behind bars. It was the murder of the decade that rocked Tucson back in the 90s. Well-known businessman Gary Triano was killed by a bomb, and the people responsible for that wouldn't be convicted yet for almost 20 years.
Yeah, in tonight's True Crime Arizona, new information about that fateful day and the conspiracies that swirled until there was finally a break in the case. Here's Brianna Whitney.
A life of luxury.
Bottle of Dom Perignon would come over to the table, compliments of Gary.
A life of leisure.
Gary was just a fun guy.
That was Gary Triano. Work hard, play hard.
He always had an eye out for business. He would go golfing with his banker, and they would he would sign $1 million loans.
Ron Lehman knew him well, Gary being both a friend and a client. Ron was Gary's attorney on business lawsuits. The two worked together for years. But that came to a screeching halt on November 1st, 1996.
It is strange that 2 of the last 3 calls he made from the golf course on the day that he died were made to me.
So it was a Friday, and I was going there from work or from home.
Sam Buttman had just gotten to the La Paloma Golf Club in Tucson. He was outside near the parking lot checking golf times.
I'm looking at the sign-up sheet, and I hear this huge explosion, a bang.
911, what is the emergency?
We have an explosion in the country club.
Need to know, is somebody injured?
And I see a car with flames coming out of it with a hood that's missing, and there's someone in the car.
We might have a dead body.
Sam runs over to the car. Inside, he finds Gary.
He's very pale. The striking thing, I've seen people die, and for various reasons, obviously, I'm a physician, but it's just white. All the blood had literally drained out of him.
The man, he looks like he's dead.
At the time, Pima County Sheriff Detective James Gamber gets the call to get to the La Paloma Golf Club for a bomb. Gamber is now retired.
I think everybody's first gut reaction was, oh, this looks like a mob hit because it's a car bombing. We don't have car bombings in Tucson.
But why would the mafia target Gary Triano? If it wasn't the mob, who would?
Gary was still struggling financially at the end, correct?
Yeah.
Do you know how in debt he was?
So when you have a lifestyle where you're spending tens of thousands of dollars a month, and then all of a sudden your cash flow gets shut off, that shuts everything down.
There were a lot of rumors that maybe he was killed over a bad business deal. Did you ever think that?
Yes.
Ron says Gary had been involved in the Native American gambling community. In the recent market crash, he lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Many thought between gambling and bad business deals, it could have been enough for somebody to want to take his life.
Gary had created this kind of flamboyant bad boy image, and he seemed to kind of revel in people going, oh, and thinking there was some mob relation. But when you followed those threads to the end, there was just nothing that came back to who wants to kill Gary Triano.
But that didn't mean money wasn't at play at all.
It turned out that he had an insurance policy that upon his death paid out $2 million. And the policy on its face looked very innocent in that the recipients of the benefit from the policy were his 2 children. But because they were juveniles, the money would go to their parent. In other words, it would go to Pamela Phillips, or who used to be Pamela Triano.
Pamela Phillips, Gary Triano's second wife. She too relished in their life of status in the fast lane. But things change.
You might say led to the tragedy that led to the end of Gary's life.
As Gary's finances came crashing down, so did his marriage. Gary divorced Pam but stayed in Tucson. Pam moved to Aspen, Colorado with their 2 kids. It was there she met an older man, Ron Young.
We get a call from a detective with the Aspen Police Department who says there's something very odd going on with Pam Phillips in that there's a gentleman named Ron Young up here in Aspen who defrauded several people for thousands and thousands of dollars. And Pam is one of these people who was defrauded, but she won't pursue criminal charges.
Detective Gamber says Ron Young took off in a stolen vehicle. The car was later found in California.
The Aspen, Colorado detective goes down and looks in the van. What does he find in there but a note that lists people that are closely associated with Gary Triano, a map of Tucson, Arizona, certain pages of Gary Triano's divorce settlement, and a sawed-off shotgun.
Yet another clue in a winding maze of mystery.
Ron Young gets featured on America's Most Wanted. His chiropractor recognizes him, says, "This guy has an appointment to be in my office Monday morning."
Authorities arrest Ron in Florida. Inside the car, they find cassette tapes.
We take one of them, we put it in a recorder, we turn it on, and it's Ron Young talking to Pam Phillips. And they're talking about the murder.
It all becomes very clear to Detective Gamber.
He says things like, "You got your 2, I want my 4. Well, she got $2 million from the insurance. And if you look at his spreadsheet, he got paid $440,000.
Authorities believe Ron was the hitman for Pam Phillips, instructed to kill Gary and guaranteed money from the insurance policy.
We arrest Ron, we bring him back to Tucson. I'm instructed to find Pam. We run one more check on Pam and we find out she flew out of the United States about 4 days before the indictment.
They end up tracking her to Switzerland and eventually to Austria.
We had taken this family on an emotional roller coaster for 14 years. And every time we were getting close to the end, it was pulled away from them.
First, Ron's trial.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Ronald Kelly Young, guilty of the offense of first-degree murder.
Ron would serve life in prison, but it would be another 4 years to wait for the end of Pam's trial.
You find the defendant, Pamela Ann Phillips, guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder as alleged in count 1 of the indictment.
Though sentenced to life behind bars too, that wouldn't keep Gary's ex-wife quiet. Soon after her conviction, Pam Phillips spoke out in an interview with 48 Hours.
He had life threats. I had life threats. The children had life threats.
When Gary was killed, well, she says it tore her apart that somebody could do that to him.
I was absolutely hysterical. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I gonna do?
She told CBS News Ron was just a friend, a business manager. She said she was not a killer.
I'm innocent. I am very, very, very innocent.
One big mystery still remains. Those 2 phone calls. Gary called Ron Lehman twice before he died. Ron wasn't able to pick up.
Left 2 messages, which was in 6, 7 years that I knew Gary, I cannot ever remember a time where he would call me a second time.
Making those calls would be one of the last things Gary did before that bomb went off.
What did he say in those messages?
Call me, you know, I need to talk to you, something's up. Just wanted to talk to me. To this day, I have no idea what it was about.
Well, you can hear more about this story and other investigations on the True Crime Arizona podcast. It's available on all of the major platforms you see right here.